Alright, check it out guys. In this video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes into Swifty's patch 5.2 video. This collaboration is awesome. We have like pro YouTubers, pro gamers from each class talking about the patch changes and how it affects their class. Their videos are already high quality and it makes it easy to edit their videos. Alright, so in this behind the scenes video, I want to show you how I did the war room. I don't know what this room is really called, but I call it the war room, and there's a couple of guys standing around this table. Using my mouse, I just panned around this room, like this, and I captured using fraps. That's it, nothing crazy, yet. And my idea was something like Total Recall, where you see these futuristic heads-up displays, like popping up around the table. Pretty much to do this, I had to do tracking, and you can do tracking in Adobe CS6, but I used Bojue 4. If you guys want, I'll make another video about exactly how I did this war room. If you're interested in how I make a 3D camera and track the futuristic display to the camera, if you guys want to see that, I'll hook you up. And because that's 3D, it pretty much took forever to render. And for Swifty's part, he sent me over his green screen footage. So here in After Effects, I mask out the edges. That kind of fixes lighting inconsistencies at the edges. Then I used key light to key out the green. Alright guys, that's the behind the scenes part. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the software I used and a little bit about how I did the war room. Now, check out Swifty's patch 5.2 video. The Machinima intro was done by Teagen. She did an awesome job. The nameplates were done by Strifium, and you're going to see Swifty and a bunch of other YouTubers. Their links are going to be in the description. Check them out and enjoy.
Here, welcome to the patch 5.2 preview for the Thunder King. As you all know, some of the classes are going to get some major changes to increase the skill required to play competitively in arenas. 5.2 also has some major overhaul changes to crowd control effects and AoE crowd control effects such as Shockwave. And in addition, they're removing blanket silences from the games for mages and warlocks. Overall, Blizzard has started down the road to a more balanced game, and I think 5.2 is going to bring us closer to the balance we seek. I've assembled a few friends to showcase the changes. Hope you enjoy.
Yo guys, it's Reinhart the Russian, and I'm gonna be walking you guys through actual changes for Unholy Blood and all the DKs on 5.2 PTR, and there's a lot of good awesome buffs you guys should be looking forward to. One of the biggest changes for DKs would be a conversion cost reduction in 5.2, where the reduction cost went from 10 runic power per second for 3% heal to 5 runic power per second for a 3% heal, thus allowing us to have a higher uptime of conversion and increase our sustained healing by quite a lot. The side effects of that include a really serious blood decay trolling, because now they get also a heal dump from their runic power on a consistent basis, and it's gonna be actually pretty huge with their death strike healing at the same time. Another one of the biggest changes is a death siphon healing buff. It went from 100% healing for damage done to 150% healing for damage done, which I think is still gonna be pretty amazing because it does decent damage in PvE, but unfortunately in PvP it only about a 4.5k heal increase, and it's, in my opinion, really not worth it, because you are trading a lot of your offensive capability via using those death runes to heal yourself. There's a minor buff for blood decays, where their blood parasites, their blood worms, actually gonna have 200% more HP levels, which is up to 75k HP overall. Now some for Unholy Love. First of all, the Black Strike is gonna put a Frost Fever as well on the target, and if you're expecting the Chill Blades, it's also gonna snare the target at the same time, which I think is gonna be amazing when we're gonna be doing hard switches in PvP, because it's gonna decrease our ramp up time on the target. It's also gonna increase our AoE capability in RBGs via Blood Boil Pestilence spread, and I think it's overall a really welcoming change for Unholy DKs, because previously it took too long for us to actually get the ramp up damage going on the target when we are switching to it. Another change that's still not affected yet is that Ripping also gonna include Icy Touch, and the Icy Touch will convert our basically Frost runes into a Death runes. Now hopefully it's also gonna refresh our Death runes on the Blood rune spot at the same time. It's also gonna be synergizing extremely well with the Chill Blades, thus putting Chill Blades up on the priority for a talent pick, and it's also gonna synergize extremely well with the Glyph of Icy Touch, that is basically an offensive dispel when you're using Icy Touch on the target. Now the changes to our Gargoyle. First of all, Gargoyle used to be an ultimate talent for us in Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm as well, and the changes are amazing. First of all, it's no longer costs runing power, so no longer have to sacrifice our own personal damage to summon the Gargoyle, and in arena matches or RBGs we can summon it right off the start very easily. This is overall a really good welcoming change, and they also increase our importance of our mastery by making a Gargoyle scale with Unholy DK's mastery at the same time. So for those Unholy DKs who actually stack up mastery, they could see increase in Gargoyle damage up to 55%, making it a really cool and deadly ability to use. Overall, the changes are really welcome in the DK community. First of all, it's not like they're just increasing our damage by a flat 5%. For Unholy, they're actually introducing a lot of quality of life changes via Gargoyle, Black Strike and Icy Touch changes. And they're also buffing our sustained DK survivability via changes of conversion. Thank you so much, Blizzard, for listening to the community, and keep it up.
Hi, my name is Hobbs, and I will be showcasing all the changes that Druids are receiving in the patch 5.2. The first change will be related to Cyclone. Cyclone now has a 30-second cooldown for Feral Druids. In addition, it will now share diminishing returns with Banish, Seduction, Bind Elemental, Hex, Freezing Trap, Wyvern Sting, Gouge, Sap, Hibernate, Paralysis, Polymorph, Ring of Frost, Repentance, and Quaking Palm. Another change that the Feral Druids will be getting is the change in regards to Symbiosis to Warriors. Shattering Blow now has a 1.5 second cast time to align correctly with the Warriors version of this ability. Right now on live, this cast is instant. Displacer Beast has been redesigned. It now triggers cat form and grants 50% increased movement speed for 4 seconds after teleporting, and no longer activates Prowl, but you will get a 4-second sprint. Other Druid abilities got changed. Cenarian Ward now grants 100% increased healing. Frenzied Regeneration scales 10% more efficiently with attack power. Tooth and Claw now scales 10% more efficiently with attack power. Guardian Druids will receive more armor. They will gain 20% more armor per each mastery rating. Rejuvenation costs approximately 9% less mana. Revive and Mark of the Wild now cost 55% less mana. Fairy Swarm now can snare more than one target at a time. In patch 5.1 you were only able to slow one target at a time. Mass Entanglement's talent got reduced drastically. It was 2 minutes and now it's 30-second cooldown. Typhoon got its cooldown increased by 10 seconds. It used to be 20 seconds in patch 5.1 and now it's on a 30-second cooldown. The Trends summoned by Force of Nature now deal more damage and healing, and the Force of Nature tooltip will report the capabilities of the summoned pets. Soul of the Forest received changes for some specs. For Balance, it now generates 40 lunar or solar energy upon leaving an eclipse. Feral, it remains unchanged. For Guardian, it generates 3 additional rage per mangle. For Restoration, now grants 70% haste on the next spellcast after the Druid casts Swiftment. Nature's Vigil in patch 5.1 used to be on a 3-minute cooldown and increased the healing and damage done by 20%. Now in patch 5.2 it will be at 90-second cooldown and now increases the healing and damage done by 10%.
Hey, what's up guys, Vans here, and throughout this video we're going to be talking about the new 5.2 Hunter changes and how they're going to be able to help you increase your PvP and your PvE gameplay. Let's get started. Alright, first up is Beast Your Wrath. It may not be activated when there is no line of sight to the Hunter's pet. Basically what this means is that you can use your Beast Your Wrath whenever a target is behind a box or a certain object in an arena match. This is going to be very useful because you can stand max range and just set your pet in with Beast Your Wrath and get the best output out of it. Next up is Silencing Shot. Silencing Shot now has a 24-second cooldown, up from 20. Keep this in mind that the duration of how long this person will be silenced for is still the same. The only thing that will be differential is that the duration of the Silencing Shot will be on a 4-second longer cooldown. Just keeping this in mind when you're trying to interrupt the next heal and let your partners know. Next up is Binding Shot. It no longer has a focus cost. Just keep this in mind when you're trying to use it, and it's also a great ability to use to trap off of instead of Lullaby. Wyvern Sting no longer has a focus cost, and its cooldown is now 45 seconds, down from 60. I believe this is a good change due to the fact that they reduced the cooldown of it by 15 seconds, and it doesn't also leave the dot, so you can certainly trap off of it, but it'll still be DR'd. Finally, the last change is the new glyph, Glyph of Liberation. This glyph causes the hunter's disengaged to heal the hunter for 5% of his maximum health when used.
Hey guys, this is Big Moran. I just wanted to go over some of the class changes that are going to be affecting mages in patch 5.2. The first thing that's been changed is Invocation, which is in the level 90 tiers of talents. In patch 5.2, if you choose this talent, Evocation will not have a cooldown, and its channeling time and duration will be reduced by 50%. When you complete an Evocation cast, you'll get 15% increased spell damage for 1 minute. In the level 60 talent tier, Greater Invisibility has been changed. It's gotten a cooldown reduction, but still does the same effect. Frostbolt cast by Mirror Images now deals 50% more damage, which isn't that big of a change because the damage is pretty low to begin with. The biggest change to mages in patch 5.2 is Improved Counterspell has been removed from the game entirely. When you use a counterspell on a target, it will no longer blanket silence the enemy. Instead, you will have to go for pure lockouts when going up against enemies in rated battlegrounds and arenas. Glyph of Fire Blast has been replaced with Glyph of Infernal Blast. Glyph of Infernal Blast causes damage over time effects spread by Infernal Blast to spread to one additional target. This will be nice for spreading your Combustion, Ignite, and Pyroblast dots to other targets. There's been another talent change in the level 30 tier of talents. Blazing Speed, which previously could only be activated after taking a melee or spell hit, can now be triggered at will. This means you can use it once every 25 seconds without restrictions. Cold Snap now heals the mage for 15% of maximum health when used, which is a reduction from its current 30%. Ice Flows, which is in the level 15 tier of talents, now has a 45-second cooldown, which is a reduction from its current 1-minute cooldown. There have been some mana adjustments for both Scorch and Arcane Blast in patch 5.2. For Frost, Frostbolt now deals 24% damage, but its debuff no longer increases subsequent Frostbolt damage. This means you'll be able to get high burst Frostbolt casts off without having to stack up the debuff first. There's also been a change for your Water Elemental, and if you play with a Rogue, you'll definitely enjoy this one. Freeze no longer does damage, and only provides Fingers of Frost on a successful freeze, which means if you freeze a target that is polymorphed or sapped, it won't break that target out of CC. Once again guys, this is Big Moran, and I hope you enjoyed my summary of patch 5.2 from a mage perspective.
Hey guys, my name is Reqy, and these are going to be the changes to monks in 5.2. So the first two are two new abilities. At level 60 you get a new talent called Ring of Peace. It forms an 8-yard sanctuary around any target, causing them to be silenced and disarmed. It's got a big green animation that you'll see here, but they just updated it on the PTR, so everywhere else it'll look like a Spirit Link totem. The second ability is called Storm, Earth, and Fire. You can summon up to 2 elemental duplicates that mirror damaging abilities that the monk has. For each spirit summoned, the monk's damage is reduced. With one spirit, you do 60% and the spirit does 60%. With 2 up, you do 40, 40, and 40. And it lasts until cancelled or dies. On top of that, Windwalkers and Brewmasters get a second trinket that gets you out of stuns and fears. On top of that, you get a buff for 6 seconds that reduces the duration by 60% of all further incoming stuns and fears. So in an attempt to make this list shorter, all of your utility moves, Chi Wave, Zen Sphere, Chi Burst, Tiger's Lust, and Touch of Karma have all had their Chi cost removed, in addition to a couple of other effects. The first is Chi Wave, which almost every monk currently uses. It's had its damage and healing doubled, which is a very nice change, and it makes it a very bursty heal. However, its cooldown has been increased to 15 seconds, up from 8 as well. Zen Sphere now has a limit of 2, so you can put 2 buffs on yourself or anyone, and when the target reaches 35% health or it's dispelled, it blows up for the AoE healing and damage. Chi Burst now does 100% more damage and healing, no longer costs Chi, and has a 30-second cooldown. It still has its cast time and is rather difficult to use, but it is still a very good burst AoE heal. Perilous has been turned into a physical ability, which means it can't be dispelled, grounded, or reflected anymore, and its base range has been increased to 20 yards. It still means you have to get behind a target to get it for 8 seconds, and if you do it from in front of the target, it's still only a gouge for 4. Charging Oxwave now has a 30-second cooldown down from 60. That's your skill shot stun that you give up Ring of Peace or Leg Sweep for. Dampen Harm is now usable while stunned, and the cooldown starts when you use the ability, not when the 3 charges ends. It still requires you to be hit for, at least with my gear, 80k for it to proc the 50% damage reduction. Healing Elixirs now heals you for 15% of your maximum health up from 10, and Chi Torpedo now does 15% more damage. Healing Spheres have been given a 1 minute duration. Healing Spheres generated by the Mistweaver Mastery, the red balls you see on the ground, have been given a duration of 30 seconds, and when they expire, if you're within 6 yards of them, you get 50% of the healing normally done. Windwalker Monks now have a new mastery called Bottled Fury. It increases the damage bonus provided by Tiger Eye Brew by 0.2% per mastery per stack. Basically, if you don't know what it does, it's a buff you see on me and you use it for a damage increase. As you stack mastery, it goes up, so I would normally have a baseline 20 when I pop this ability. With the new mastery, it goes up to, I believe I'm at 38% currently with the new mastery. The old mastery Combo Breaker is now a passive ability granted at level 15 that has a 15% chance to make your next Blackout Kick or Tiger Palm cost no chi. Tiger's Eye Brew, in addition to the mastery change, now gains 1 charge after spending 2 chi instead of 4, stacks up to 20 times instead of 10, but you can only use 10 at a time. Okay, the last change is for Brewmasters. Your Mastery Elusive Brawler now provides 20% more stagger per mastery rating. The stagger is a dot you take instead of the direct damage.
And next up is Paladins. So what's changing in patch 5.2 for Paladins? So first off, Eternal Flame's getting a little tweaked. So now in patch 5.2, when you cast Eternal Flame on yourself, it's going to do 100% more periodic healing if you cast it on yourself. Next on the list is Hand of Purity. Not many Paladins I've seen, at least on live servers, are speccing into. Hand of Purity is now also going to provide, in addition to the 70% periodic damage reduction, it's going to now provide an overall 10% flat amount damage reduction. So now it's a 10% overall damage reduction plus a 70% periodic damage reduction. So this change is definitely going to make Hand of Purity a little bit more attractive for Paladins. The next change is very small. Judgment is now going to be costing 5% base mana. So on live servers right now, it costs 3,540 mana, and 5.2, it'll cost 3,000 mana. So a very, very small change to that one. And the final change to Paladins is to the ability Consecration for Protection Paladins. So this is a little math change, I'm not sure what to make of it, but Consecration's damage is now increased by 789%, but it is scaling less by attack power by 11%. But ultimately, we have 3 buffs and that change to Consecration, and that's it for Paladins.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Bigrizzo, and today we're looking at the 5.2 priest changes. I am so excited for 2 of these in specific, and you're going to see what those are in a little bit. Let's jump right into this. So, Power Word Solace has been completely redesigned. Power Word Solace now replaces Holy Fire, and it deals the same damage and interacts with other spells and abilities in the same manner, but it's instant, costs no mana, and restores 1% of mana on each cast. I think this is going to be really good for Disc Priest, and it's a little more offensive than Mindbender if you ask me, a little more consistent. So this is one of the ones I'm really excited about. Dominate Mind is now a 1.8 second cast time, down from 2.5. This is really good if you ask me, myself included, and a bunch of other Shadow Priests are probably going to end up running with this ability as opposed to Psyfiend and Void Tendrils. I just think it's going to be a really good pick for Shadow Priests. And this is kind of cool. Angelic Feather now has a 6-second duration, up from 4 seconds. So let's test that out right now. Oh wow, this is actually lasting a long time. This is kind of cool. I think I might like this for maybe for like disc PvE or something. And Body and Soul did get a nerf. It's 3-second duration down from 4 second. It's alright. It's not really a game changer. And Glyph of Holy Fire has been completely redesigned. It now increases the range of Holy Fire, Smite, and Power Word Solace by 10 yards. Alright, so let's get into the disc changes. This is going to be very good next patch. I'm so excited to play it. So Focus Will now reduces damage taken by 15% per stack with a limit of 2 stacks, so you can have up to 30% damage reduction just from Focus Will. I think that's really good and one of the things this priest really need. And this one's kind of cool. Spirit Shell no longer benefits from Mastery and now properly includes the benefits of Divine Aegis and Critical Effect Chance. So Spirit Shell might actually be pretty useful against non-Shaman teams. And this was one of the ones I'm so excited about. This is going to completely fix Disc in my opinion. Rapture now provides mana equal to 250%, up from 200 of the Priest Spirit, but no longer benefits from Spirit provided by short duration bonuses. Despite the ending part, that 250 is so consistent, and that's exactly what this needs, and I think you're going to be seeing so many more Priests playing with Disc. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed 5.2 as much as I will.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Sensus here, and today I'm going to be going over the class changes for rogues coming up in patch 5.2. The first change is Preparation is now a baseline ability learned at level 68, so you no longer have to choose between Preparation or Shadow Step. Preparation refreshes the cooldown on Sprint, Vanish, Cloak of Shadows, Evasion, and Dismantle. Next up, Versatility has been removed from the game in place of a new ability called Marked for Death. And what it does is it instantly generates 5 common points on your target, and when the target dies, Marked for Death's cooldown is reset. Alright, next up we have another new ability taking the place of Preparation called Hit and Run. And Hit and Run works similarly to a Mage's Alter Time ability. It teleports you to a targeted location, and upon activating the ability a second time or after 10 seconds, it will teleport you back to your original location. The last new rogue ability coming up in patch 5.2 is called Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger is not yet live on the PTR and causes your Ambush, Garrote, and Chief Shot to have a 30-yard range, and will cause you to teleport behind your target. Now I'm assuming when this ability is finally implemented into the game, it'll take the place of Shadow Step. Alright, next up we have a change to Burst of Speed. Burst of Speed now only costs 30 energy down from 50 and can be used while in stealth. Burst of Speed can no longer break rune effects but can still break snaring effects. Next up we have a change to Shuriken Toss. Shuriken Toss now causes you to throw Shuriken instead of auto attack for 10 seconds after Shuriken Toss is used. As you can see, you get a buff, and as long as that buff stays up, you'll continuously throw Shuriken. Alright, next up we have a buff to Deadly Throw. Deadly Throw can now interrupt spellcasting when used at 3, 4, and 5 common points, and upon interrupt prevents any spell in that school from being cast for 4, 5, and 6 seconds depending on the number of common points you had when you used Deadly Throw. Nerve Strike is also getting a pretty big buff. Now not only will Nerve Strike reduce your target's damage by 50%, but it'll also reduce your target's healing by 25%, so you might be seeing this talent used more effectively in arenas, RBGs, or any sort of PvP scenario. Alright, now rogues did get a slight debuff when it comes to Shadow Focus. Shadow Focus not only reduces the energy cost of an ability used while in stealth by 75% down from 100%. To be honest, I don't think this debuff is really going to affect much. I think it's kind of needed with the new PvP set bonus, which is going to give us 50 energy instead of 10. And that brings me to the next changes. Rogues are going to be getting a couple of PvP set bonus changes. The first one is Vigor is now the 4-piece set bonus and increases maximum energy by 50 up from 10. And the second one is Deadly Brew is now the 2-piece set bonus, and its effects remain unchanged. And what this means is Subtlety and Combat Rogues will have 150 energy up from 110, and Assassination Rogues will have 170 energy up from 130. And finally, we have a couple specific spec changes. For combat, we have a buff and a nerf. Vitality now increases attack power by 30% up from 25%, and Blade Flurry now deals 75% less damage. Alright, now we're going to wrap it up here with Subtlety spec. Sanguinary Vein was given a buff. It now increases the damage the target takes by 20%, up from 16%. And that pretty much does it for rogues in patch 5.2. I'm really looking forward to these changes.
Mastery will be a 1-minute cooldown, down from 2-minute cooldown, and personally I think that's going to help around the board for any spec. Now for Reso spec, Conductivity no longer requires that the target be within the area effect of Healing Rain. That's pretty cool, I like that change. Now Stone Bullock Totem now absorbs 25% more damage, and Unleash Fury Flame Tongue now increases Lightning Bolt damage down by 20%, was 30, so that's a decrease, and Lava Burst damage by 10%, which is an increase, which was 0%. This is pretty cool, as you can see here, the different damage it does from normal to regular. Now also, the Glyph of Purge now adds 6-second cooldown to Purge. Alright, so let's talk about the Primal Earth Elemental and the Primal Fire Elemental. It now deals 20% more damage. Also, Astral Swiftness now increases your spell haste by 5 and melee by 10. It was 5 and 5%. Elemental Blast now has a chance to increase the caster's agility for enhancement shamans, meaning it's added to the rotation. Now, Shamanistic Rage is now available to an Elemental Shaman as well as Enhanced Shamans. This is very beneficial for Ele Shamans, and I'm super excited to see it in the patch notes. I hope we see more like this in the future. Now I want to talk to you about Glyph of Flame Shock and Flame Shock itself. Now, Flame Shock itself, the duration has been increased by 25%, and the glyph of Flame Shock has been redesigned. The glyph now causes the Shaman to heal for 50% of the damage dealt by Flame Shock. This is pretty cool, and I'll talk to you guys in the near future. Peace.
Hey guys, I'm ToastMonster, and I'm talking to you about the Warlock changes for patch 5.2. Blood Fear used to be that it would make your fear instant, but on a 10-second cooldown, and it would cost 10% of your health. Now instead, it gives you a buff, which makes it so that the next melee attack that hits you will cause that person to be feared, but it only has one charge. Now, I think this is a great change, because I think the ability was quite overpowered, although I have noticed the ability Blood Fear is now quite buggy, and it does actually count as though it's a spell you're casting yourself. So if you're going to be using it to stop a rogue's opener, so they're going to open on you with a cheap shot or a garrote, it does actually not work, and instead the rogue will not be feared, but you will still be cheap shot and you will lose the buff. It's basically the same as any normal spell cast by you. Now the next change I'm going to talk about is the spell lock change, and this has made it so that spell lock is now only an interrupt rather than the silence as well, and it's still going to be 6 seconds. The next change I'm going to talk about is the change to the talent Soul Leech, and that doesn't really affect PvP too much because it just means Soul Leech provides absorbing instead of healing, but since no one really runs with that talent anyway, it's not too big of a deal. Now, the next thing to note is Sacrificial Pact now requires your pet to sacrifice only 25% of its health instead of 50%. It still gives you the full absorption shield, so it now absorbs 400% of the sacrificed health rather than 200%, so I think this is going to be a little bit of help. It's going to mean your Warlock pets aren't dying as much. Now the next change, which is Kill Jaden's Cunning, is now a passive talent, and its activated ability has been removed. The passive damage from Archimonde's Vengeance isn't really too big of a thing, because that doesn't have a visual effect anymore. It also means you can tell when the ability's been done much more easily, because you're going to be able to see purple lightning shooting at someone, especially when they're taking a lot of damage from it. Now, the change to Grimoire of Sacrifice isn't too big of a deal, it's a slight damage nerf. I think that's going to be alright, I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal for Warlocks. Grimoire of Sacrifice now giving Whiplash instead of Seduction when a Succubus is sacrificed is also good, because it was kind of irritating to have Warlocks being able to have 2 DRs on CCs, and it was just a bit too strong, I think. Now, Glyph of Burning Embers being removed, and its effect now being baseline for Destruction Warlocks, and the same for Soul Shards for Affliction Warlocks, is a great change, because it just means that you're just going to be able to store that a little bit more, and you don't need to take up a precious Glyph slot with it, and I think that's actually just a good thing for Warlocks. It just improves it a bit. It means Affliction's going to be able to get more Soul Burns out, and it means Destro can pull a little bit more, so instead of pulling 3, they can pull 4 Embers if they want to try and get out those Chaos Bolts. Originally, the Glyph of Ember Tap was going to be increasing the healing of Ember Tap by 50%, and I think they realised that might just be a bit too strong, because already on live, my Ember Tap heals me for about 100k, so 150k is a bit too strong, but instead now increases the heal by 5%, but makes it a lot like the Glyph of Hellstone, so it's going to be done over 10 seconds. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether Warlocks do choose to run this, because you can see on PTR, mine's ticking for about 10,900. Now, that is quite a strong hot to have, but I think the burst healing Ember Tap was really strong, so I don't think many people will be using this, except maybe against cleaves that are based a lot on dot damage, much like Shadowplay or Boomkin teams. Now, there is now the Glyph of Drain Life, which increases the healing of Drain Life by 30%, and you can see normally Drain Life is healing me for about 8,000 per tick, but if I use the Glyph, it's going to instead heal me for just over 10,000, being at 10,450 per tick. Now, this is a nice glyph and all, but because Drain Life isn't really used too much in general rotations in PvP, I don't think the change is going to be too big, and the heal doesn't really seem like it's going to be that game saving, although it could be useful to run against really heavy damage cleaves where you have trouble surviving, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I don't really think it's going to be that useful overall. Now, one change that's not on the patch notes is the change to Fell Armor, which is your passive armor as a Warlock now. Now, this used to increase armor by about 2,600, but instead it now reduces damage taken by 10% as a blanket damage reduction. I think this is a great change, because Warlocks were really actually lacking in passive survivability with this expansion, because this is going to affect melee and spell damage, rather than just physical damage from melee with armor. It looks good for the Warlocks this patch. Anyway, that's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed it.
Hey, what's up guys, Bajheera here. What we're going to do now is look at some of the projected changes for Warriors in patch 5.2. First thing to look at is Warbringer, in addition to all the effects it normally has, is going to apply a 50% slow. And something they didn't tell you is that now Warbringer also works with the glyph of Blitz. So your Warbringer charge stun will stun up to 2 additional targets. The cost of enraged regen has been reduced to 30 rage from 60 rage. Although the healing effect of Second Wind has been restored to 3%, the rage component is now 15 rage over 10 seconds rather than 20. In order to carry out that survivability nerf that they wanted to give warriors, they've nerfed defensive stance down to 15% unless you're spec'd into Prot, in which the Unwavering Sentinel talent will give you that extra 10% damage reduction while in defensive stance. To round out the changes to the healing talent tree, Impending Victory now heals you for 15% of your maximum health, up from 10%, around 37k. Now this next change, except for maybe the defensive stance nerf, is the thing that I think is going to affect us warriors the most. This is the Shockwave nerf. The cooldown is being doubled from 20 seconds to 40 seconds. Note that if you hit 3 or more targets with your Shockwave, the cooldown is reduced to 20 seconds, but the tooltip states that you must deal damage to 3 targets. So for instance, if you miss, the cooldown remains 40 seconds, so make sure you're hit capped. Even though it is a considerable nerf, like Second Wind, I still think that Shockwave is probably going to be our best choice in this tree. Stormbolt is also receiving a small buff to the damage component. Rather than dealing 100% weapon damage, it will deal 125% weapon damage base, and it will continue to deal 375% weapon damage on targets that are permanently immune to stuns. We also received one change to one of our glyphs. Glyph of Death from Above will no longer increase Heroic Leap damage by 100%. It will continue to reduce the cooldown of the ability by 15 seconds, but they thought the damage component was gratuitous. So in the current build of 5.2 PTR, it has been removed. We're currently seeing that Shield Barrier now scales approximately 10% less efficiently with attack power, and the base damage of Shield Slam and Revenge has been increased by 150%, but these abilities now scale approximately 10% less efficiently with attack power as well. For all you Fury Warriors out there, Blood Surge now reduces the rage cost of your next 3 Wild Strikes by 30, up from 20. Arms Warriors are also seeing a few changes in their abilities and mechanics. Slam now deals 220% weapon damage, up from 190% weapon damage. Taste for Blood has also been completely reworked. Rather than having a relationship between Overpower and Heroic Strike, anytime you would proc an Overpower, be it through a Mortal Strike or from a target dodging, you will receive 2 charges of the use of Overpower, and you can stack up to 5 uses of the Overpower ability. And you can see how that works here on a target dummy. All I'm going to be doing here is using Mortal Strike. So I use Mortal Strike once, and I receive 2 charges of the Overpower ability. I use Mortal Strike again, and I receive 2 more charges. You can see on my Overpower ability tooltip, it now has 5 stacked up to it, since I used Mortal Strike 3 times. Now I'll Colossus Smash and just start spamming Overpower as much as I can. So you can use Overpower 5 times in a row. Or you can continue to stack those up with your other abilities and maybe just keep Overpower so you never have to not have something to use during a global cooldown, maybe spamming Heroic Strike in the meantime as you continue to generate rage from your auto attacks, charges, and Mortal Strikes. I'm honestly not seeing these changes affect our warrior playstyle very much. It will obviously change how effective we are as a class, since we are receiving quite a few nerfs. Some that affect our survivability, like the defensive stance nerf, and some that affect us in every aspect of our game, like the changes we're seeing to Shockwave, since it's such an effective peel for both us and our teammates, and of course as an offensive ability and an offensive stun that can potentially catch an entire team. All in all, Warriors are looking to have a strong showing in patch 5.2.
Hey guys, Hobbs here. In patch 5.2 on the Isle of the Thunder King, what you're seeing is the Alliance starting zone, where there's going to be new quests, new dailies, and a new hub. These dailies have some really exciting rewards as well, which I'll get into later. The real cool thing about this is if you look at the map, you've got the Alliance down here, and up above you have the Horde. Now, having the 2 mixed, it's not unique, but in the center where all your dailies are going to be performed, there's not only going to be PvE quests, but also PvP focused quests, where players will be able to down opposing factions NPCs, but also get additional bonuses by PvP and getting credit every time they get a kill as well. It's just going to be a great mixture. Secondly, the rewards for doing the dailies, they're going to have a treasure room, which isn't unlocked as of yet. They're also going to have like different Mogu artifacts for their faction, and it's faction based, so as you grow, we're bringing back the Kirin Tor, led by Jaina Proudmoore, and the Sun Reaver onslaught led by Lothamar Theron. Earning reputation with these new factions offers the heroes opportunity to receive new quests and reputation and rep rewards, including new items, but the big thing, a new mount as well. Blacksmiths are really going to like patch 5.2, as there is a forge where they can make weapons, new weapons, but not only new weapons, but some old classic ones, which will be great for transmog sets. Now this island will be progressively unlocked, so as the dailies are done, you're going to go further into the island, getting closer and closer to the new raid, the Thunder King. As these quests get unlocked, you're going to unlock areas like the shipyard, the main courtyard, and I'll tell you, as I explored that area, they were so beautiful. The mobs had some pretty unique attacks, some spells I had never seen before. It had a really nice feeling to the whole island, very much variety, and yet it all tied in quite nice. The new raid, Throne of Thunder, is going to have 12 new bosses. The raid finder of this zone will be divided into 4 different wings, so the bosses will be grouped up. Assuming if they did it like the last time, it's going to be, you'll be able to do the first few bosses and then they'll unlock it progressively. The final boss, Emperor Li Xin, if you defeat him in heroic mode, it will actually give you an opportunity to face an additional 13th boss. Patch 5.2 will bring back the Black Prince legendary questline. As you progress through the Thunder King's palace, the reward will bring back headgear enchantment, Crown of the Heavens. As a bonus, after the Thunder King has been conquered, Nalalak, the Stormlord, will appear. This will be a new world boss that is not yet released. Speaking of world bosses, also Unasta, which I had an opportunity to actually get into a 40-man raid and see some of the mechanics. He shoots lasers, he has sound blasts, he has these big waves that damage everything in front of him. He has a single target that bounces among multiple targets and can take a raid down immediately. This is not your normal tank and spank boss. I actually did a video on this, and the more I read on the spells and showed the different ways of theory crafting on how possibly to down this boss, the more I respect this boss, as the level of difficulty to down this boss is crazy, especially when you're going to be grouping up with other players. The other thing coming in 5.2 with world bosses is all world bosses now tap to a faction, so if Alliance taps it first and more Alliance come, they are eligible to get credit for downing the boss. Well guys, if you can tell, I am excited. I got into patch 5.2. I wanted to share some of the PvE moments with you. As you know, I cover a lot of PvE. I am now covering some PvP with these 2 little gnomes here. Thanks guys, looking forward to your feedback below on what you're excited about of all this PvE and PvP content just mashed together.
I have a special gift for you in this video. It's going to be a collector's edition of Mists of Pandaria signed by the developers. In order to win this prize, all you have to do is leave a comment below. And I'm also going to be giving away 2 copies of Mists of Pandaria. So good luck. Hope you enjoyed this patch preview of 5.2. As always, Swifty here. Thanks for watching.